Welcome to the post-pandemic virtual interview webinar. Virtual interviewing is here to stay, and it's even become more prominent during the pandemic and post-pandemic. We're going to cover how virtual interviewing works, the post-pandemic interview questions for 2022, questions that you can anticipate that recruiters will ask you, as well as questions that you can ask them, how to prepare for the virtual interview, and then we'll be sharing tips and strategies to grow your confidence and ace the virtual interview. During the webinar, if you have any questions, please feel free to put your questions in the chat, and we will have a time of Q&A at the end. The benefits of virtual interviewing. From a company's perspective, they're able to reach more candidates in less time, and they save money as well. And then there's no travel costs involved, and it also reduces the amount of time it takes to hire someone. And it also is an increase of productivity for companies, as they need less staff to review resumes, as well as to conduct the interviews. And according to HireVue, 86% of companies are using virtual interview technology. That was from a Forbes article from March 2020. That number is a little higher now, probably closer to 90%. And there are two types of virtual interviews. The first one is the on-demand virtual interview, where a candidate uses video recording software to record their questions and sends back the video to the employer for assessment. That is what HireVue software is, and other companies like it. And then the second one is the live virtual interview, where the interview is conducted online in real time using different video conference technology such as Zoom or Teams. So how the on-demand interviewing works is it's integrated with an applicant tracking system. And I'd say like 99% of Fortune 500 companies use these applicant tracking systems. And so the resumes are going through that. And if they're selected, then you get an email with a link for a video interview. And then artificial intelligence rates it, and they will look at your tone of voice, your facial expressions, your eye contact, your body language, and your word choice. So you want to incorporate as many keywords as possible from the job posting, and then recruiters will watch it. So what can you expect from an on-demand video? Well, here's what a screen would look like. So they will give you platform instructions. So you want to take your time and really read those carefully. And then they'll give you a chance to practice with 1 or 2 questions before the real interview. So take your time with that as well and do the practice questions. Get comfortable with using the software. And then they will give you 30 seconds to prepare for each question. And there's usually about 2 to 6 questions, and so usually about 20 minutes long. And so each question would be about 2 minutes, let's say 2 to 3 minutes. And while you are giving your answers, there will be a countdown clock. So as you can see here with the video response, as response time. So here you can see this person has 249 minutes left. So it's so important for you to prepare your interview answers in a very clear and concise manner so that you don't get cut off by the timer. You want to check your tech. This is so important. You want to practice what you look like when you're doing the virtual interview. You want your web camera to frame your face in the center. You want your microphone to be working well, and also your internet to be strong. And you want to make sure that the lighting is behind the camera, not behind you. When the lighting is behind you, they won't be able to see you. All they will see is this flash of light. So that's important. You can use your cell phone and see what you look like. And then you can practice in different parts of the room to see where the lighting is the best. And you want to power up your laptop or phone. You definitely don't want to run out of juice during the interview. So do a dry run of your tech the day before. Make sure you have a background that is neutral, neat, and organized, and then also that it's quiet and disruption-free. And then if you have other apps open on your computer, shut those down, as it could slow down your computer. Also, you want to dress for success. Well, at least from the waist up. Wear the same attire you would wear if you had an in-person interview. It actually makes you feel more professional when you're wearing that professional attire. You want to wear solid and darker colors as opposed to stripes or patterns. And know what the dress code is for your industry that you're interviewing for. Prepare for the interview by having your attachments ready. Have a copy of your resume, the job posting, cover letter, or other documents nearby. And then also any notes that you would like to refer to during the interview. I have a little trick. If you have practiced your interview stories and you just want to maybe have some key words to jog your memory about what to say, you can actually attach your interview notes right next to the camera. And you could be looking at your notes and the employer would never know. Also, you want to jot down any notes that you want to take if you're having that in-person virtual interview, some questions that you may want to ask them later. And have a glass of water nearby, just in case. You want to minimize any distractions. So we love our pets, our dogs and our cats, but you want to put them somewhere where you can't hear them. And close the windows. Make sure you put your cell phone on silent mode, because that can be a real distraction. 93% of communication is nonverbal. So it's so important to make eye contact with the interviewer. You want to look at the camera rather than on the computer screen. And then just be yourself. Show your personality and be enthusiastic and smile. Smiling really puts you at ease as well as the interviewer. It makes you appear confident, and also sit up straight and have good posture. When you're doing the virtual interview, instead of that handshake that we would do in person, you want to have the digital version, which is the wave. So you make sure you greet the interviewer. You know, hi, it's great to meet you. And also, you want to record your answers on your cell phone or laptop. And you want to see what you sound like and as also what you look like. And you could also use Big Interview, which is a great resource. Go to hofstra.edu on our Career Hub, and you can practice general interviews as well as interviews by industry. It's a great resource for our students, and I know many students have used it, and it's really helped them to prepare well for the interview. I highly recommend it. You also want to practice your elevator pitch. The first question in many interviews is, tell me about yourself. And that is your elevator pitch. It's your short 30-second to 2-minute introduction of yourself. And it's so important that you prepare well for this, because first impressions are lasting impressions. And you want to say who you are professionally. So you could say, I'm an MBA in finance, accounting, marketing, analytics student. And you want to really study the job posting and highlight the skills and experience you bring that the employer is looking for, and also add an accomplishment. What I want to say is you really want to tailor your elevator pitch in the interview to the job posting and incorporate, as many of those skills that you have as possible. You want that employer to hear your elevator pitch and say, wow, this is a great candidate. They know exactly what we're looking for, and they have a lot of the skills and experience that we're looking for. So an example could be, hi, my name is Lauren. I'm an MBA in marketing student at Hofstra University. I'll be graduating in May, and I have experience in social media marketing, email marketing, and digital marketing. And last summer, I was a digital marketing intern with Meta, and I helped to manage some of the social media campaigns and also track their Google Analytics. And I'm really looking forward to interviewing with you today, and excited about the full-time position as a social media marketer that you have. You also want to practice with 5 relevant star stories. Have at least 5. And the key thing is, make your stories relevant as possible. Use keywords from the job posting. You really want it to be concise, so your story should not be more than 2 minutes long. You want it to be about what you did, but not how you did it. And you don't want to memorize your stories because you don't want to sound robotic. You just want to memorize kind of the key words. So the star story is, you want to start with a situation, describe the context of the problem, task, the details about your responsibilities, action, what you did, and how you responded to that. And then the result. The result is so important. Explaining the impact you made or the lessons you learned. I would suggest that you look at your resume and see where you have accomplishments on your resume. Maybe you helped to save the company money, or maybe you were in a sales position and you increased revenue by how much, or maybe you streamlined operations and you increased productivity by what %, or maybe you got an award. So all of these types of results could be a terrific star story on an interview. So here's an example. I know we just had our accounting career fair a few days ago, and some of you may be a VITA volunteer, which is a volunteer income tax assistance program volunteer. So if I was on an interview and the recruiter asked me, give me an example that shows you have strong client relationship skills, I could say, well, when I was a VITA volunteer last spring, it was April 15, and a client came into the library and wanted me to help them with their taxes. However, the library was closing, and I said, sir, please come back tomorrow and I'll be happy to help you with your tax return. And he said, oh no, please, I really want to meet the deadline, and is there anything you could do to help me today? And so I went to the head librarian, told her the situation, and said that I would be willing to stay a half hour later today to help the client complete his tax return. And she agreed. And so I helped the client, we completed the tax return, and then the next day he came back to tell me how grateful he was. And so that's just an example of how I will go out of my way to help our clients and build relationships with them. So if you hear, it's so important to give a specific example. So this is great when employers ask you, give me an example of, So whatever the skill is, teamwork, leadership, multitasking, project management, you know, whatever the skill is, they're looking for a specific interview story you can tell them. Here are some practice questions for the mock interview, usually with the human resources person, which is that initial interview. Again, it's the tell me about yourself. Why do you want to work for us? So important that you research the company. You want to dazzle them with your knowledge about the company. You know, have some statistics or facts about them. And then what do you like most about the position? What are your strengths? What's one weakness? And with the weakness, you really want to think of an area that you've been working on improving. And so that you spend most of your time answering that question with how you've been improving. And then what is your greatest accomplishment? What are your career goals? Like, where do you want to be in 5 years? And with that, think about where you might be in that company if you stayed with them for 5 years. You don't want to actually answer that. Sometimes students answer that with an answer of, I want to be something completely different than, you know, what they're interviewing for. So try to think of it in the context that I just mentioned. And then why did you leave your last position? And it's just so important that you always stay positive in your answers, even if you left the last position because it was a toxic work environment or you had a terrible boss. You don't want to say that. So, you know, you really want to be tactful about how you answer why you left the last position. You can think about, you know, because I'm looking for another position that has this, and that last position didn't have that. Here are some post-pandemic interview questions you may be asked. How did the pandemic affect the way you see your career? How did you adapt to working remotely? This is a good one. How have you worked on your professional professional development during the pandemic? I think for all of you, you've been in graduate school, but maybe even before that, you know, maybe you've been really upskilling. Tell the employer about that. And then employers are always asking number 4, you know, would you be comfortable working on site now or in the near future? There's been a big push for companies in Manhattan to have their employees work in person. And then especially in financial services. And what's your vaccination status? That is a legal interview question, especially, you know, if the employer is requiring all of the employees to come back in person. And that's for the public health of their employees. When working hybrid or remotely, how do you manage your day? And how do you maintain communication when working remotely or on hybrid teams? So you want to have good examples about how you've been doing that and doing it well. The other thing is, because you're remote, companies are looking for candidates that have high emotional intelligence. They may ask you, describe a conflict with a boss or coworker. I know a lot of students say they can't think of a good answer to that question, but quite often you could think of, maybe you were in a group project and you couldn't agree on what the topic for the project would be, or maybe you didn't have an all-out conflict with a boss or coworker, but maybe you had a different point of view. And you were both able to share the different points of view and then collaborate and come up with something even better. They're also looking for candidates that can take initiative. Describe a problem you faced, when you recommended and implemented a solution. That's if you have a good answer to that, you have a good chance of getting hired. They're always looking for people that can take initiative. Example of time management skills, leadership and teamwork, and then someone who is both flexible and independent. That's so important, again, because you know you will be working both remotely or hybrid. So prepare your star stories. Some other strategies to ace the interview is you want to find and practice interview questions on Glassdoor. Glassdoor could be a great resource for that, as well as you can read about what other employees have said about the company, and then get a sense of whether you think that company would be a good fit for you. Another trick is to Google the company name in quotes, the title you're interviewing for, and interview questions, and up will come different links with the interview questions that you could be asked. That's really a great way to prepare for the interview. You also want to optimize your endings to questions. And so like just that other example I gave, you could say, to summarize, that's how I'm great at building client relationships, or to summarize, just repeat back to the recruiter, summarizing what they asked you. And then network to find out more about what the company needs. So there was an MBA student at Hofstra who wanted to work at Henry Schein, and she had an informational interview with an alumnus before the actual interview, and found out that they were looking to migrate to a new system, and they wanted somebody to train some of the older staff in the new system. And when she found that out, she had an example from the time she was an intern at American Express, when she did this very same thing, training a new system to some of the employees. And she was able to really make her interview story so relevant. And of course, she got the position. And the other thing is to try to get multiple interviews. So if you apply to jobs, you can get an interview. Don't stop applying to jobs. Don't stop networking. Keep going. Try to get 3 or 4 interviews. It gives you leverage, especially if you get more than one offer. And also, it makes you feel more confident, and you will feel less nervous on the interview because you also have other opportunities that are being considered. Here are some questions you can ask the interviewer. So, what were the biggest challenges during the pandemic? How do you monitor remote work? What tools does your company use to collaborate? And I really like this next question. How do you ensure culture is maintained when working in a hybrid or remote way? I know that's a big challenge for many companies, and they're trying to come up with some innovative ways to handle that. But that's a great question to ask. And also this next one. What are your thoughts on diversity, equity, and inclusion, and how have you made it a priority? These are great questions, because the interview is not just for the interviewer to see if you're a good fit for their company, but it's also a chance for you as the candidate to see if that company is a good fit for you as well. After the interview, be sure to send a thank you email and really reinforce why you're interested in the company and the position and why you're a good match. And, so consider adding something that you discussed during your conversation, especially when you know that the interviewer seemed really interested in your answer. And if they mentioned a problem or a challenge that they have at their company, I highly recommend that you do some brainstorming and suggest a solution to that company problem, and ask for another meeting to talk about your recommendations. And that could get you a second interview. And then you want to close your email by reiterating your appreciation, and then also asking about next steps. So the next steps are practice your elevator pitch and your relevant star stories, check your tech, try to network with alumni or others before the interview, and please make an appointment with our office, with Patrick Halton or myself, and use Big Interview to practice. So now I'd like to ask if you have any questions.